Just one story today, but it's a good one. We're going to talk about a small town in Mexico that during the 60s had a real-life vampire problem. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you're having a great day too. This, for the next couple foreseeable episodes, because I have a lot more work. I've said this before, I have 3 jobs, and I'm having to do some changing around and things like that. So, for the next couple episodes, at least, maybe a little bit longer, the episodes are going to be a little bit shorter. Some of them, the stories are going to be shorter, so I don't have to dig through tons of research. And some of them, the actual episode length will be shorter, but I still want to make sure I get out an episode a day, and I don't want to sacrifice quality. I don't want to sacrifice consistency with, what's the other thing? Oh, with not being on schedule. Like, I'd rather have an episode out every day that's a little bit shorter than, say, I'm only going to release 3 episodes this week. So I wanted to go ahead and put that out there. The quality's the quality. The quality's the quality. I mean, come on, guys. You've been listening to it long enough. You're like, quality? What? He has a nice mic. That's his quality. And he can edit out deep breathing. That's the quality. So, but for the next couple days at least, maybe the next week or two, unlikely it'll be that long, but I just need to kind of get used to these changes at work. But we'll keep putting out episodes every day. So let's go ahead and get started with the first and really only story tonight. Our feature story, I have no idea how this has not been made into a movie. This is absolutely insane. I just found out about this the other day. Balls out bizarre story. So, I'm going to add a little narrative flourish to it, where I'm going to create a character for us to kind of follow around in the beginning because it gets a little windy. But the details and the facts of this story are 100% true. Check the links below. They're there. May. It's 1963. It's May. We're in Mexico. There's a police station in the town of Villagrán, and our fictional hero, Roberto, is sitting in there, police station. Let's say it's 10 o'clock at night, smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee. One of his fellow officers, Luis Martinez, sitting there drinking coffee too. There's another couple cops milling about. The sergeant's like, why aren't you guys clearing these cases? Do you know what's going on here? You, in my office right now. I'll have your badge and it's basically an 80s movie. And Roberto is sitting there and Luis is sitting there, and all of a sudden this 14-year-old boy bursts through the front door, dripping sweat, can't catch his breath. And Luis is like, yo, what's up, dude? What's going on? And the boy goes, I ran all the way from Yerba Buena. I think that's how you pronounce it. The boy's like, I don't remember how to pronounce the name of my own city. Now, Luis knows that Yerba Buena is 14 miles away. This kid's 14 years old, so he didn't take a car. He sprinted. And Luis is like, you ran all the way. You ran 14 miles. He's like, nearest police station, nearest cops. Luis is like, okay, what's going on, kid? Kid finally starts to catch his breath and goes, vampires. Cue the X-Files music, but a couple of the cops kind of start laughing. Luis kind of turns around, kid's probably drunk, maybe walked by some crazy party, but, they're like, okay, kid, okay. Why don't you go into the back of the police station, get some sleep, I'll take you back to the town tomorrow. And the boy's like, I'll show you where they're at. I'll show you exactly where I saw the vampires. Luis is like, yeah, sure. And Roberto kind of laughs, our fictional character in this, so we have a distinct narrative, kind of laughs and is drinking coffee, reading the newspaper. And the next morning, Luis and the young boy, whose name was Sebastian Guerrero, jump into Luis's Jeep, I'm assuming, and police Jeep. Do they have, police cars in, wilderness areas? That's totally off topic. Anyway, so they hop into his police Jeep, presumably, I'm assuming, and they drive off. And then, the day just goes on, as normal. Next morning, Roberto shows up to work. Luis isn't there. Roberto's like, hey, where's Luis? And they're like, oh, he He didn't come in. He's probably out at a bar drinking late last night. He'll probably wander in any moment. Roberto's like, yeah, probably. Next day, Roberto pulls up to the police station. Doesn't see Luis's car in the parking lot. His Jeep. Walks in, he goes, hey, Luis calling sick? Other officers are like, we don't know. We haven't seen him in a couple days. We really haven't seen him since he went back to Yerba Buena. Buena? And just accept that the pronunciation's wrong. We haven't seen him since he went back to Yerba. I'm glad how the people in the country can't even pronounce the names of the places in their own country. Anyways, Roberto's like, he's still not back. And they're like, no. Everyone's getting nervous at this point. The next day, Roberto, it's been, 3 or 4 days now. I've even lost track of my own fictional timeline. Trust me, the details are real. Roberto shows up to the next day. There's still no sign of Luis. His car's not in the parking lot. But what Roberto does see is Mexican army troops pulling up in their Jeeps and his fellow police officers putting on their vests, which they probably didn't have back then because it's 1963. They're suiting up and they go, we're going to Yerba. We're going to that place we can't pronounce, Roberto. Roberto's like, okay. Now, okay, Roberto is fictional. I gotta keep saying that so I'm not throwing you off. But the details are so bizarre. I needed someone to kind of start that up. Now we're going back in time 1 year. We're back in the year of 1962. Yerba Buena. There are these two brothers named the Hernandez brothers, and they were con men. They were con men all their lives. But they were small con men. And one day they decided, for whatever reason, they said, you know what we need to do if we really want to live a life of comfort? We need to start a cult. They're like, yeah, dude, that's a great idea. How do we do that? It's kind of molded around for a while, tossing around. They found the town of Yerba Buena. They weren't from there. They're from the big city. And they went to this town, and it was a very impoverished town. And they showed up, and they've uneducated, illiterate people for the most part. If you're from there, I apologize. That's just from the articles I read. I haven't been there. It's not my recommendation of the town. These two brothers show up, and they tell, it's almost like this weird flim-flam Pete's Dragon type of like hucksterism, where these two guys show up in a town, and they're like, we are prophets from the exiled Incan gods. And people are like, what? I'm assuming they were wearing costumes. I don't think they showed up in like flip-flops. But they're like, we are prophets from the exiled Incan gods in the mountain ranges surrounding this town. There are caves. And in those caves, the Incan gods left their gold, but they protect that gold. They're living in those caves. Now, we can help you find that gold if you worship us. Now, I don't think their act took hold right away. I don't think people are like, well, golly, that sounds like a great plan. Let's do that. I think they kind of wormed their way into the community, but they did eventually start to get followers. Now, this is one of those things where it's like step 1, step 2, step 3, profit. Like they didn't really, profit, pun intended, but they didn't really plan it out. So they start to get some of these villagers under their thrall. And they're like, well, like, what do we do now? And first they're like, you must pay us tribute, you must worship us. So that starts to happen. These people do start to worship them. And again, they didn't just show up. The people aren't so stupid they jumped off the back of a truck and said, we're gods! And everyone started giving them apples. But they were con men. They knew how to manipulate people. But they started to get some of the villagers were starting to pray to them as they were these prophets. They were getting like food and stuff like that. It's not like they had a ton of money, but they were getting some resources. These two guys said, you know what we should do? We should start banging the chicks. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So then they're like, if you want some of that sweet, sweet Incan gold, you gotta have sex with us hot Spanish chicks. And the girls are like, okay. There's not much else to do around here. It's 1962. What's on television? Oh wait, we don't have a television. We're in the middle. We're in like the most poverty-stricken region of Mexico. So then, that's not enough for them. They go, you know what? Okay, so we're banging all these hot chicks, and that's cool and all. This is a weird leap in logic. We're banging all these hot chicks, that's cool and all, but you know what I've always really wanted to do, brother? The other brothers are like, what? And he's like, I wanted to bang dudes. So then, For whatever reason, they start banging the dudes too. They start saying, if you want to get some of this sweet, sweet ink and gold, you, guy, have to start having sex with me? What? Anyways, I guess you're never happy with what you have. So now they're banging both the chicks and the dudes. The cold actually gets bigger at this point, surprisingly. And they start having these huge drug-fueled orgies, which again, I guess it's something to do on a Saturday night in Yerba Buena. But now, people are like, you know what, Dan, I'm tired of getting banged up in the mountains and not getting none of them sweet, sweet ink and gold. So people start saying this is all a fraud. Like, yeah, we've given you a couple apples, and you've given us a couple of STDs, but where's the gold? And so members start to say, let's quit, and they start to leave. The Hernandez brothers know that their gimmick is almost up. The Hernandez brothers come up with another thing they need to do. It is, we are going to find a goddess. So they go to the nearby town of Monterey, and they meet a prostitute and her pimp. The prostitute's name is Magdalena? Or is it Magdalena? It's Magdalena. So the prostitute's name is Magdalena Solís. I personally love the name Magdalena. I don't like how you can shorten it to Mag. Look, that's gross. But Magdalena, I think, is a beautiful name. Magdalena Solís was a prostitute. She was a prostitute as a young teen. And her brother pimped her out. So not coming from the best background. That's an understatement. Anyway, so the Hernandez brothers meets Magdalena Solís and her brother. Solís? We'll say Solís, because it actually kind of plays into her type of character. And they go, hey, listen, we got this great scam going at this podunk little hillbilly town out here in Mexico, but we need someone to play a goddess. And maybe a god. I think they might have thrown the brother a bone or something like that, but most of the story centers around Magdalena. And they're like, you can be this, you're just going to pretend to be the operative word, that you're the reincarnation or you're an avatar of this Incan god. And we're going to be living in that we're going to have unlimited apples. We'll have so many apples. I don't know what they grow out there, but we're going to have unlimited apples. These people are just going to give us apples, give us food, give us all this stuff. And if you're into it, you can bang them. And Magdalena Solís is like, okay, that works. I think this will work. So they go back to Yerba Buena. And one time they're having a ceremony up in the caves, like they normally do. And the people, again, the villagers are kind of like, ugh, not another orgy. Ugh, when's the gold coming? So they're very dissatisfied. I'm sure there was a couple of them who were like, it's orgy night. But they're doing their thing. And all of a sudden a smoke bomb goes off. And the people are like, what? What's going on? And out of the smoke steps Magdalena in full goddess clothing, like beads and stuff. And she declares herself to be the goddess Coatlicue. Now, I've read articles and they're like, well, Coatlicue was actually an Aztec goddess, and how did they not get caught? Well, I guess the people there are too stupid. Nobody cares. Like, if I'm standing there and I've already, been on a bunch of these drug-fueled orgies, and all of a sudden someone pops up and says they're Chuck E. Cheese out of the smoke, I'm not going to be like, Chuck E. Cheese, that's a fictional. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to accept it as true, because I've already done so many other insane things. But anyways, Coatlicue is an Aztec god that she chose. Magdalena says, I'll be Coatlicue. I'll be this goddess, this reincarnation of the goddess. Little did the Hernandez brothers know that Coatlicue is known for her human sacrifices and blood drinking. So, the people now are totally on board. They're like, whoa, we actually saw this god. The gold must be here. The Hernandez brothers were telling the truth the whole time. I don't think they went by Hernandez brothers, but, they accepted the prophet's teachings. And they continue on with the drug-fueled orgies and stuff like that. They've now bought themselves more time. The problem is that Magdalena starts to believe, she starts to have a mental breakdown, and she starts to believe she truly is the goddess Coatlicue. It's no longer an act. Her brother and the Hernandez brothers, it's still just a con game, but to her, she is this god. So the orgies start to get darker. They didn't turn the lights down, she starts to incorporate elements of BDSM, beatings, whippings, pain, because that's what got her off. So you have these villagers who before would just go up for a good porking with their neighbor, but now they're getting beat up as their goddess is laughing at them. So now people are like, if there's any truth to this, you need to show us the gold now, because I'm tired of showing up and getting kicked in the nutsack because you think it turns you on. And two of the members were, I don't know if those were their exact words, but two of the members said, we're done. They're up in the cave, and these two people are like, there's been no results, we don't believe this stuff, we're done. And Kotlaku, Magdalena, points at them and says, non-believers, get them. And the two men were lynched. They were beat up and then hung by their neighbors, by the fellow villagers. And at that point, the drug-fueled orgies became basically drug and blood-fueled orgies. There's bloodletting, people are getting poked and stabbed and bleeding and having just this violent sex. And then Magdalena goes, because I'm this goddess, the only way that, because I'm actually this goddess and this isn't an act, the only way I can stay young is to drink human blood. So anytime anyone started to say, I don't know about this, or whatever, or, there's not enough apples at this orgy, I'm out, they were sacrificed. But the first two dudes just got hung, and you're like, well, okay, that's a bad way to get hung in an orgy. I'm sorry, I don't know why I told that joke. The first two dudes were just hung. The rest of them had to go through the ceremony that Magdalena had created. See, she's just absolutely nuts at this time. They were beat up, then they were burned, parts of them were set on fire, they were cut, maimed, which generally has to do with body parts being removed or your face being, you don't really maim people on the chest. It's usually like you're cutting their eyes out, actually, you can maim them while they're still alive, this stuff. And then the coup de grace is they would remove your heart while you were still alive as well. And then they would just let you bleed to death. There was no literal coup de grace. They just let you bleed out. They rip your heart out, show it to you a bit, if you still have your eyeballs. Hold it up to your ear if you don't, and then they just let you bleed out. And she would take the blood in a chalice, and she would drink it, and she would give it to her brother. And then the Hernandez brothers would drink some. They'd put a little chicken blood in there. I don't know why. Water it down. It's pure human blood. And then the villagers, the dude's neighbors that they just murdered, would then have to drink out of this chalice. 8 known victims. And there's possibly more. And we don't know. Because what happened next was 14-year-old Sebastian Guerrero, one night, here's a bunch of noise up in the caves. Thinks, whoa, there must be a cool party going on up there. Wonder if they're watching one of them spooky movies. Like Creature from the Black Lagoon, because it's 1962. So he climbs up and he looks in a cave and he sees blood everywhere. Heart being removed from a guy. Magdalena holding up a chalice of blood, human blood, and drinking it. He then, like I said, runs 14 miles. Gets to the police station at Villa Gran. Runs through the door. Roberto, Mexican army, the police, are descending into the town of Yerba Buena. People just start scattering. Because they know the jig is up. One of the Hernandez brothers gets killed in a shootout with the military. And the reason why they brought the military is because they did not know what was going on. All they know is one of their officers and a little boy left and have never returned. And they were like, there might actually be vampires out here. We don't know. They descend upon the town, shoot out with one of the brothers. They kill him. The other brother actually gets killed by another sect member who that day made his move. He knew it was a gimmick and he was trying to blackmail his way into the group. He would have gotten his heart ripped out if none of this had happened, this other sect member. Magdalena and her brother, they were found stoned out of their mind while all this is going on. A copious amount of marijuana, and they were just both just blitzed. And they're just stoned out of their mind, probably watching like Mighty Mouse or something. Cops come in. They do find the bodies of... They did end up finding 6 bodies hidden in the caves, and that's why they think there was not really more than that. And they did find the body of Sebastian Guerrero and the body of Luis Martinez, the cop, and his heart had been ripped out. So he had gone through the ritual. He most likely had his heart ripped out while he was still alive. And then with they still had a bunch of followers. They had a gun battle up in the mountains. The army had to flush them out of the caves, and a bunch of the cult members got killed trying to guard the entrance of their gods. And then the ones that did get arrested, they all got sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murders. Everyone only got sentenced for the 2 murders of the cop and the kid. Magdalena and her brother ended up getting sentenced for 50 years. And at this point, I looked it up, Magdalena would be free, but she'd also be 80 years old, so I'm not worried about her. However, I did think about this too. What if she drank enough human blood that she's immortal? What if she's still a 30-ish something looking prostitute walking the streets of Mexico looking for another group of worshipers? Yeah, probably not. But I do think she probably just died in prison. Because, 50 years is a long time to be in prison. But I'm like, how would this... When I was reading the story, I was like, this is the plot to Resident Evil 4. This is this crazy cult taking over a town and, slowly corrupting everybody. And I think it's funny because, one, I've never heard of the story. It's completely cinematic. It actually has a narrative arc. They don't need to make up Roberto. That was just easier for the podcast. But it has this narrative arc, and there's backstabbing and these weird twists and turns. But also, I would like to see, you can make a thriller based on this story, but I would like to see a comedy based on the guy who lives in this town who's not part of the cult. That would be a hilarious movie. Well, without all the heart removal, but you have a guy, he's just he's basically a Hank Hill type guy living in this town, and everyone in the town starts to join this blood and drug-fueled sex cult that ends up sacrificing people and drinking blood, and you'd be like, dag nabbit, why won't those kids just keep it down at night? And just people are like, my soul, and he's trying to fix his car, and he's shaking his fist. And he's mowing his lawn. There's human bones getting kicked out of his lawnmower. And he's like, oh, them vandals, they need to stay out of here. That would be a great comedy. I guess there's no hero in that. I guess you have basically the anti-hero as the ornery dad. And then you just have a bunch of murderers running around. But yeah. So work on that, Hollywood. Make a comedy about a guy who lives in a town full of murderous cult members and base it on a real story. That will make $1 million. I'd watch it, at least. But I know what you're thinking. Yeah, sure, you wrapped up the story well. You told that story amazingly well, Jason. You only mispronounced 30% of it. What a great, chilling story, but what happened to Roberto? What happened to our fictional hero cop? In this true-life event, surely, he has a wrap-up to the story, right? He does, actually. He actually was one of the first men out. He was there to avenge the death of his partner at the hands of these cult members. When he found out that the main people were all arrested or dead already, and he saw the villagers pour into the caves up in the hills, he was the first one. He saw a horse in the field, and he's like, I'm getting on that horse. And they're like, dude, we have vehicles. You don't have to get in. He gets on the horse, and he rides up to the caves. Guns blazing. Villagers, falling. One villager's like, I was a part of the cult. Ah! He just happened to be going for his daily jog that day. Roberto doesn't care. 2 gunning them all. But what happens is he gets up there. There's a bunch of cult members. Shooting at him. He's like, horse gets scared from all the bullets, throws him off. What's a horse noise? Quality entertainment here, ladies and gentlemen. Roberto falls into the dust, and he's getting pinned down by gunfire. And he's shooting back. But he's just outgunned. The rest of the army's still, getting into their jeeps to get up to the mountain. He shouldn't have taken the horse up here. He realizes his mistake, but his heart was so full of hatred towards these horrible vampire people that he wanted to have their blood instead. So, that was terrible. I'm probably going to edit that out. If you hear it, it's just because I was too tired to edit it out. Shooting. He runs out of ammo. 10 cult members in the cave, eyes glowing. He knows that he is going to face his end. But then he hears something. He looks around. Can't see. It's not coming from the cave. The cult members are like, shh! They're slinking back into the cave. I'm glad they've become literal vampires at this point. Anyways, they're like, sunlight. And Roberto is like, I don't know what that noise is, but I have a feeling it's salvation. On deep into the cave, the the creatures of the night begin to approach him again. Get him! Eat him! And he turns to where he now hears the noise coming from. Thump, 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 thump. And it is Salvation. The Carpenter copter slowly starts to come down to the mountain. Miniguns blazing. Just villagers getting killed left and right. Just lighting them up with a minigun. Now, yes, this story takes place in 1963. I was born in 1976. So in this story, I'm like a little fetus. I'm like embryonic fluid is pouring out of the sides of the helicopter. The villagers are like slipping on it like Home Alone. They're like, oh. And anyways, people who are new to this podcast are like, I'm never listening to another episode again. Like, you had me with the story, but this is nonsense. But if you're a fan of the show, drip, 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 all the amniotic fluids coming out of the helicopter. Get in if you want to live! Fetus Jason yells to Roberto, and Roberto's running to the helicopter, dodging the bullets that I'm shooting past him. Jumps into the helicopter. That's the helicopter noise I should have made earlier, actually. Helicopter takes off, goes into the sunset. I saved our fictional character from fictional death. Carpenter copter to the rescue. Okay. So, yes. So that's where we're at. So, yes. But everything else is true. Everything else in that story was true except for the last 3 minutes. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. Our Twitter is going to be @JasonOCarpenter. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one, guys.